very fortunate today to have a gentleman to talk with us who lives in this neighborhood a few miles away in nearby Berkeley. His name is Alan Steck, and he with Steve Roper were the recipients last night of the American Alpine Club's Literary Award. Steve was not present. He's in New Zealand, I understand, Alan, but we're glad that you were here, and congratulations.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, Steve left 2 weeks ago, actually. He has a period of a vacation opportunity because his wife is on sabbatical, so they decided to go to New Zealand. Not a bad choice for this winter.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Alan, we want to talk to you about a number of things. As one of the great Yosemite climbers, I guess that I'm sure that many people, as I did when I started climbing, one of the first books that I saw after Royal Robbins' Basic Rockcraft and Advanced Rockcraft was the 50 Classic Climbs of North America. It's a wonderful book. What year did it come out?
Well, that was, I think we started working on it in the late 70s. I guess I have this number in this date in my mind. It's 79, but I've kind of I'm having trouble with chronology these days.
Well, so it's been out quite a while. It's a great book. Now, you and Steve decided to, of all of the climbs in this country, you chose those. How'd you go about it?
Well, let me also tell you how it started. Steve was in the service, and I get this letter from Vietnam, you know, and this is back, of course, maybe 10 years before we actually got it in print. But he says, "Alan, we've got to do this book," and so it was his idea to put together this compendium. And I can imagine that once we started making lists of climbs, it took maybe 2 or 3 years to massage it. Let's use that verb, because climbs came and went. It's kind of interesting how we felt about this list as it changed over the years. And our criteria, we had maybe 4 items. It had to be good climbing. It had to, each route had to be a classic. It had to be striking from afar. I mean, there were a couple of others that I won't mention now, but it only took 1 of the 5 to make it a classic, let's say. Some routes are beautiful from afar, and the climbing is superb, and they get climbed a lot. Another route might be beautiful from afar, but not get climbed very often. I've been kidded unmercifully about a route we put in on Hummingbird Ridge on Mount Logan. 30 years ago we climbed it, and it hasn't been repeated, you know, so they say, that can't be a classic, you know, and so I say, well, it's beautiful from afar, so that's it's a great route. It's a beautiful thing, beautiful climbing, but it just hasn't worked out for the parties that have tried it.
To go back a little farther, how did you and Steve get together in Yosemite?
Well, I was working since the early 50s at a mountaineering backpacking shop in Berkeley, and I met Steve through that association. He was a customer, and he's about 14 years my junior, so he was pretty young when I first came across him. But anyway, we've had a great association over the years, and he worked at the ski hut for a while, and we did a guide to the Pinnacles National Monument together once, which he wrote actually, and we published. So I've known him for quite a long time. And
where did you start climbing?
I started in Berkeley.
In Berkeley?
Excuse me. When I came back from the service in I was discharged in '46, I guess. And it was that year that I found the Sierra Club. And you may recall that the Sierra Club had rock climbing sections. It was then primarily a California conservation organization. It's now grown considerably since those days, back in the '40s.
Right.
But they had rock climbing sections, and quite by chance, I found this. I was 20 years old. I had no idea that people climbed. I knew about mountains. My father had shown me mountains, and I had actually climbed some minor peaks in the Sierra, but I didn't know about technical climbing, using equipment and where you need special shoes and all that sort of thing. So that's how it started.
Who were some of the people who were around when you first started climbing in Yosemite?
Well, the people who did the original ascents were still around. They weren't climbing as much. Dick Leonard's name, you know, I'm sure, a lawyer in San Francisco at that time. David Brower, I remember David Brower would come out occasionally at the local, we were climbing locally in Berkeley, places like Indian Rock, which is very famous now, and Cragmont.
And David, just parenthetically, is sort of the daddy rabbit of the Sierra Club and one who took it, I guess, nationally. And
he helped to make it into a national organization. That's quite true. And well, we all know what he's done throughout his life. But at this time, when I met him, he was still teaching climbing. He taught me a few things, and I remember locally. I never climbed with him in the valley or on any serious climbing adventure. We had, there were very few people in those days who were going to Yosemite. If you remember in Royal's talk, I think he started coming maybe about the early 50s, as I recall. And we started there in probably in 47 was probably the first time I actually did a real climb in Yosemite Valley.
Do you remember what it was?
Well, it might have been the ascent of Pulpit Rock, perhaps. I have no idea what it's like now, but then it was an aid climb, and we were learning how to use pitons, my friends and I. You can kind of imagine there's no body of people who can help you learn these things. There were a few people who were more experienced, but they were out doing their thing, right? They weren't teaching. So there was a fellow by the name of Fletcher Hoyt, whose father was a doctor in Berkeley, I think. And he and I became good friends, and we did a lot of climbing together and learning experiences together as well. And learning pitons is a tricky business. You've got to be careful, and particularly if you don't have anybody around to guide you. So we kind of stumbled our way, you know, through those years, 47, 48, and did some new routes, and with the equipment that we had, which was very minimal. People keep asking me, what actually did we have in 1948, let's say. I suspect it was only just very ordinary pitons, probably very narrow, I mean thin. The only angle that we had was the Army angle, which was probably a half-inch angle piton. You know those long Army angles, remember those? That they used in training the mountain troops.
Wonderful Yosemite exhibit here.
You've seen it, yeah, right. We had one on exhibit down there, right? Yeah, exactly. So that was our rack, you know.
In your book, the 50 Classics, refresh my memory or tell us. I know that you have the Salathé route. Is that correct?
The Salathé Wall route is in
Right.
there. That's a route that Roy Robbins climbed in 1962, I believe.
Now, isn't the Royal Arches also one of?
That's one of our classics too.
One I've done.
Right.
Is there another nose? Is the nose? Is there?
The nose is also there. Yes, the nose and oh my goodness, the arrow tip. I don't think we included the entire chimney, the arrow chimney.
Lost Arrow Spire.
Lost Arrow Spire. And northwest face of Half Dome. And the other is the route I did with Salathé on Sentinel. Which is
right.
North face of Sentinel.
So a half dozen, actually.
Yeah, right. It's a large percentage, right?
Of all of these,
of the
50, what are a couple of your favorites?
My favorites? Well, I always have a hard time with people asking
I
that.
can imagine.
Do I have a favorite? I don't really have favorites. I like them all, you know. I mean, there's some that I like more than others, but as a matter of fact, I like the Royal Arches a lot. And but let's say of Yosemite. If I were to pick probably the greatest climb I've done in Yosemite, I would say the Royals and Frosts and Chuck's route on El Cap, the Salothe Wall, because again, another Roper suggestion. He says one day he says, you know, we have to do the Salothe Wall, and this was 1965 maybe. It was climbed in '62, remember, and by the time we got on the climb, we were, well, by the time we got on, we were still weekend climbers. I mean, I call myself a weekend climber. I never in my life have spent more than 4 or 5 days in Yosemite Valley at any one time. I didn't have the urge to spend a summer there, for instance, because I had other places I wanted to go, other climbs I wanted to do. So we were weekend climbers going up and repeating a route, a marvelous route, and as Royal said last night, it's one of the great climbs of the world, you know, and I agree with him. And we made the second ascent. Roper, myself, and a doctor friend of ours, Richard Long. Actually, then he was in medical school. He's now a physician, orthopedic surgeon. So anyway, you asked for a favorite climb, and I have to say that because it was a great experience. And
Alan, what are you doing these days?
Oh, I retired a number of years ago after I finished my work with, I was working at the ski hut, and I had this idea with a friend of mine to start an adventure travel company. And this we did in 1969. January 1st, 1969, we started a company called Mountain Travel.
Sure.
Lee LeBon, myself, and Barry Bishop. And anyway, I was with that for 10 or 12 years, and it was marvelous. You know, a midlife change is not easy to do, and but we brought it off. We survived the first years when it's, what are the statistics? I think 60% of all business ventures fail in the first couple of years. I mean, small businesses. So anyway, when I retired from that, in 1980, let's say, or 79, I just I didn't have to go back to any job. So, although I led trips, I have a home office deduction on my income tax, so I still do that. All my books are on that, and
I'm not. I know you've got to get back to your meeting in a couple of minutes, but wanted to ask you, because this is basically for the Climbers Ranch and the Tetons. Do you have a favorite climb up there? The Exum Ridge?
I've done some climbing there, and of course there are a number of routes in our book too. The direct Exum is there. Let's see what else. The north face of the Grand.
North face, right.
Direct Exum, north face.
Those are the only two I remember.
No, the North Ridge.
Oh, and the Mount Moran, I think.
Right. Yeah. South. Is it the southwest face of Mount Moran?
Correct.
We climbed all of them for our book, you know, so we could have first-hand experience. And so, if I were to say which was the most memorable, I think maybe the climbing on Moran was very exciting, and north face of the Grand was a great climb too, and we did that in quite good style. Roper and I, we managed to do it from Jenny Lake, round trip, leaving at say 3 in the morning and getting back by 3 in the afternoon. So we did it in 12 hours. But
it's not the way it's done now usually. It's not the way it's done now.
They camp up there, right?
2 days, yeah.
And well, also we didn't rope up for quite a distance. We did maybe half the route unroped, and until you get to the Bat Guano Chimney or something like that. But Moran had more interesting climbing in that. If you know the climb, you know those.
I've been trying to do it for a long time. I haven't made it.
Yeah,
but,
there's some pretty hard. Well, I mean, we did the pendulums. Well, actually, I don't think we free climbed that. It goes at pretty high standard.
So, are you climbing at all now?
I'm still climbing. I decided I wanted to keep doing it because I enjoyed it. You know, I enjoy the activity. I like getting out in the backcountry, and Of course, I don't go the backcountry as often as I'd like, so I boulder here in the Bay Area. So I'm keeping active, and it's good for my spirit and keeps me fit.
Great.
So
you look good. Again, congratulations on your award.
Well, all right. Thank you very much.
And thank you so much for talking to us for the Climbers Ranch Video Library.
You're very welcome.